Everybody, welcome into To The Point. I'm your host, Noah Warren. Hope everybody's doing well on this Tuesday, January 24th. And here on this Tuesday, we have a lot to dive into. Have some thoughts on the NHL world. Today's going to be a day of pondering, a day of ideas, thinking where could certain players end up. I'm talking from the National Hockey League in particular when it comes to movement, just watching games. Later in the show, Shamus will join me. We're going to talk about the teams that are tanking for Bedard. So, for instance, Anaheim, Chicago, Columbus. Montreal, what players should these bottom feeder teams be looking to sell in order to lose more games? That's right. Who should these teams trade so they do not win? That is what these teams should be looking at, getting a good haul in return to help you in the future. We'll talk about that today. We'll also get into the Australian Open a little later on. Tomorrow on the show, Matt Wright will join me. We will start previewing the championship games in the National Football League. We will talk about Rangers-Leafs. Big game for Matt Wright. He's a Rangers fan, diehard Rangers fan, playing against the Leafs. So 2 original 6 teams. My parents will be in attendance. So another big milestone for them watching. That's a really good game that they're going to. Happy for them to get to that one. But let's start today with just a general thought, because I'm watching last night's game between the New York Islanders and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you can go away watching a game and say, well, a team won 5-2, they dominated. That's great. You know, a team with Toronto was better than the Islanders. Toronto's a much better team. Okay, let's turn off the show. No, that's not what you're here to hear me talk about. That's quick. That's easy. Head to another Leaf platform for that. What I'm here to talk about today is just things that I notice and different themes from teams and patterns. So, for instance, to me, the Toronto Maple Leafs start every period slow. That's something I've noticed about this team. They start every period, the first 5 minutes, they're waiting to get into the game. Their opponent is ready to go, and the Leafs are not. And they escape it against the New York Islanders last night, a team who's not going to make the playoffs. I thought they were going to. I'm wrong about that. They will be sellers at the deadline here if they don't pick up wins in a hurry. But when you are the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we know who they're going to play in the first round because the Boston Bruins don't lose games, you're going to play the Tampa Bay Lightning, whether at home, whether at MLA Arena in beautiful Tampa Bay, Florida. You know who you're going to play. And if you start period slow, if you're not ready to play, if you get a deficit, you're not going to be able to come back against Tampa like you do the Islanders, or that you can do against the Montreal Canadiens, or even the Winnipeg Jets. They had a horrible first period last week. Their goaltender bailed them out. In the first period last night, the Toronto Maple Leafs were horrible. Horrible. They did not bring anything to the table, and they did not start playing until about 5 minutes left in that period. You might say it's one game, it's a small sample size. I notice patterns. I watch a lot of hockey, and I look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I just think they're a bad first period team, but they are a bad team to start periods. You need to start on time. You need to start ready to pounce, ready to make plays. They sit back. They need to wait for something to happen. They're just lollygagging into the game. The game's starting. And guess what? Yes, it's January now. It's the dog days, and you can see the All-Star breaks a week from tomorrow, and you can't wait to get there so you can go to Florida, even though you're not going to the All-Star game. Skip it. Still go to Florida, get some sun, or the Bahamas for a couple of days. But with all that being said, you got to be ready to play, because in April, it won't be the Islanders. It won't be these crap teams. So that's first observation. Be ready to play from puck drop. And if that means, and this is something I would consider if I'm Sheldon Keefe, and I get certain coaches are about matchups. You want this line against that line, and that's the way you approach the game, which I'm fine with. Coaches have been doing that forever and ever, and it won't change. But if you need to start the game and have the David Kampf line on the ice, do it. Because that line will not start with no pulse. that line will have something to say. They will throw a check. They'll dump the puck in the corner. They get energy going into the building. That's what they are. They're an energy line. So have your checking line start the game. It doesn't have to be Marner. It doesn't have to be the Matthews line. It's something I would look into because those two players, for whatever reason, they don't start games well. They find their way. They glide their way into the games. Have somebody set the tone from the puck drop. Camp line on the ice, opposed to these top two lines where, yes, obviously the better players are on those lines, but they aren't ready to play. Just because, and I learned this a long time ago, this is coaching 101, sports. If you have a good parent, this is something, even if you had a bad one, this is something they probably taught you. If in life, things aren't just handed to you. And just because you have a certain status doesn't mean you're going to get something. Just because you are a better player than the players behind you doesn't mean you'll get more ice time. Because before you know it, guess what? You might not be playing that well, and then you might be in their shoes. So you need to appreciate what you have. But if you're in a position and you are not getting the job done, you can be replaced. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, these top two lines can still play 20 to 24 minutes a game. That will not change. But when it comes to starting a game, when it comes to getting that responsibility, that's not guaranteed for you. It's not in a bylaw that you have to get on the ice, start the game, that it's completely on you. You need to be out there first. No, it's horseshit. That's irrelevant. It's wrong. You reap what you sow. And that's for something for the Toronto Maple Leafs, for me, that is so apparent. They don't start games on time. Do it. Second observation. Sheldon Keefe is becoming a very good coach when it comes to adjustments. And you have to give credit where credit's due. I don't love the idea of having to put Marner with Matthews on the same line. That's just me personally as an avid person who watches a lot of hockey. I don't think that you have to put your two best players on the same line. In Edmonton, they do it, and I've never loved it. Draisaitl can carry his own line easily. He's to me, he's the third best player in the world, Leon Draisaitl. Well, Cale Makar is pretty good. He's in the top four. And I got Vasilevsky in there. So he can carry a line by himself, but on occasion, or a lot of the time, Edmonton feels like they have to have those two guys on the same line because they don't have anybody else that can carry. They got Puljujärvi, who's dragging the team down game by game after just doing nothing in the crap play that he provides. But my bigger point here, as I get off track, I don't love the fact that you have to put your two best players together. But if you have a feel for the game and that you believe that you need a shift, that you need something to change, I can appreciate the fact that you did it on just a night. And early in the game last night, I mentioned a sad sack first period and a slow start to the second period. Sheldon Keefe made the transition going from Bill Nylander and Austin Matthews to Mitch Marner with Austin Matthews and Bill Nylander with John Tavares. And it was a brilliant move. Both lines got better. But to me, what it really shows is Mitch Marner had a great stretch. He had the incredibly long point streak. He's going to the All-Star game like he deserves to. So is Austin Matthews. The best forward, and I've said this in the past, the most consistent player on the Toronto Maple Leafs roster this season has been Bill Nylander. He's been consistently their best player. He's having a season where he looks like he's in the same conversation with a Nick Ehlers. Remember, Nick Ehlers had an 80-point jump that season with Winnipeg 2 years ago. He had that big leap. He's not in the Pasternak conversation. Come on, Pasternak's Pasternak. But you're there with some of the elite wingers in this league. Bill Nylander. Last night, having 4 points, he's tied now with Mitch Marner in points. And he's played one fewer game, I'll add. That's right. Bill Nylander is tied with Mitch Marner in points, which seems unheard of because he was always second fiddle. He was always, okay, well, who else do we have to throw in the ice? Let's get Bill Nylander out there for a shift. He is now the person you rely on. Who gave them their jump last night? Bill Nylander and John Tavares, but to me, the biggest point was Nylander finding the back of the net, making really incredible passes. Samsonov making strong passes down the ice. But I love seeing, to me, he's just a different player this season. It's not just offensively. He will never be Patrice Bergeron. He will never be a Selke winner, but he cares more in his own zone. If he loses a puck, he will fight to get it back. He has a sense of urgency. He has a care that I don't think he's had before. You see it. He's just a different player. He's got a different vibe to him. And credit to him for doing that because he's played with different guys all year long. He's bounced around. He's been on different lines. He's been in different situations. He's been asked to play center, and he's done it all without complaining. And this is a guy who's been thrown all the criticism in the past while Matthews and Marner have skated for their lack of production in the postseason. It's been all on Bill Nylander. He didn't back check. He didn't go in the corner. Fair, but also the other guys didn't get any blame for not showing up either. But what I liked about the Nylander-Tavares last night is I thought Tavares had a really strong game, in particular in the second period. John Tavares is at his best when he's near the front of the net. What did he do last night? He took pucks to the net. He was going along the half wall. He beat defensemen to the front of the net. His skating's not elite, but he got past guys. He got to the front of the net. He got whacked second, third attempts. And he made a few really good plays back-checking wise, being in the right position defensively, and something he hasn't exactly done great lately, including Saturday night against La Belle Province, where he was out to lunch on the game-winning goal in overtime. He was prepared for the situation last night. He played incredibly good hockey. And both lines end up, Tavares and Nylander get 4 points. Marner gets a goal late in the game in garbage time, but again, that adds to his confidence. And now you have options. And if the argument is that this season Bill Nylander's been as good as Mitch Marner if you're Sheldon Keefe, then hey, run with the Marner and Matthews line. And maybe you want to get them together because you feel like you want this line to be in game one when you start the playoffs, you want them to be playing together. Which, start doing it now. Again, there's a lot of games left, but you also want to get prepared for them. You're heading into the All-Star break, so why not now? Again, I don't love the combination. It feels desperate to me. It feels like a last resort. But clearly, Sheldon Keefe loves playing them together. But the way their top guys are playing defensively, I thought Matthews had a strong defensive game in the first period where Toronto really wasn't involved in scoring chances. But he made a great back check on Barzal. And then they lost the puck again. He came all the way back on Beauvillier to make sure he didn't get a strong scoring chance. He's doing the little things correctly. Now he's up to 25 goals. He's feeling great about himself. So the confidence is there, clearly. And this team is playing well defensively. They're not allowing a lot. And then it brings you to the clear observation. The Toronto Maple Leafs may look at Matt Murray and say, this is going to be our guy in game one. They might have already decided that. They shouldn't. Matt Murray has not earned the right to start game one just because he started a playoff game before. Matt Murray shouldn't just get the net because he's won a cup. Ilya Samsonov is the better goalie right now. And down the stretch, they should play until they find out a number one. But how to approach the rest of the season if I'm Sheldon Keefe, Kyle Dubas, and the nerd squad that they have running the cap. If Samsonov's going well and he wins 5 straight games, good. Start him. To me, it's no debate. Samsonov's going tomorrow night playing against New York Rangers. If he wins that game, he's going Friday. And I would go like that. If you lose to the Rangers tomorrow night, he doesn't have a good start. He leaks a couple goals you really don't like. Hurt your eyes to see them go in the net. Then make the change. Then you go to Matt Murray Friday night. And he plays against his former team in the Ottawa Senators. And if he wins that game, then you go to Matt Murray against Washington on Sunday. It's not that complicated. That's how I'd approach this idea. Is if you're winning games, if you're playing consistently well in net, you are going to get a good run of starts. And if you're not playing well, if you're losing games, the other guy's going to get that opportunity. And it puts pressure on every guy to have good games. Because you lose, it's going to the other guy, and he could be in the net for 2 weeks. You've done the back and forth through 40-some games. But you're in a position now where you need somebody to jump out and say, I am your number one goaltender. Neither guy has definitively said, I'm your man. Neither guy has said, you know what? I'm so good, you can't look past me. Because for stretches, Matt Murray has looked like the guy. But then the last month, he wasn't a great goaltender. He let in some stinker goals. He got pulled against the Ice Cats. That happens. But he also didn't have great games before the game against the Panthers either. Samsonov was great, and he got injured. Got back from injury, was a little inconsistent. Matt Murray grabbed the net. Through all of that, you see two guys that have 2 good save percentages, 2 good goals against average, and 2 guys that are winning a lot of hockey games because the team in front of you is pretty damn good. But to me, the idea that Matt Murray should just get the net because he's been in a playoff game before is stupid. To me, it's stupid. That's like saying Frederik Andersen should just get to start because he's Frederik Andersen, we got him under contract. What if Korchkov's in Carolina is a better option? What if he's more reliable? What if he's a guy that the players like better? They actually believe he's going to be in the net. All of these different reasons. Then you go with the hot hand. You go with the guy that gives you the best chance to win. Here's case in point of that logic. The Pittsburgh Penguins went with Matt Murray and not Marc-Andre Fleury. A rookie, they went with the rookie over the veteran. Well, that doesn't make any sense, no. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury had won a cup in 2009. Why the hell wouldn't you go to him? Why? Because Matt Murray was playing better at the time, period. Resume is a resume. There's certain people, it doesn't matter. I don't care what fucking Brian Elliott's save percentage is when we get to the playoffs. Vasilevsky started every second of every game. Why? Because he's Andrei Vasilevsky. He's the best goaltender in the world. When you have 2 guys that are the same damn skill set, basically, and you look at the numbers are the same, advanced metrics, feel, I don't know, whatever else you want to use up there in your calculator, it's about who's playing the best. It's not about who's got the credentials. This isn't a war ops mission. This isn't, you're a first patrol and you went to Nam in 1980. No. We're not hiring Jack Ryan here. We got 2 guys that are the same. Same skill, same all of it. Side note. I just finished Jack Ryan Season 2. It's on Amazon Prime. I know the show's been out for a while. But I want to give everybody a disclosure. I loved Season 1. Jack Ryan. If you haven't seen the show, I'd recommend watching Season 1. It's very good. Very, very good. I'm a sucker for any kind of terrorist show, I'll admit that. And, solving these cases, I love those. Season 2 is a drag. Season 2 is a tough watch. If you haven't seen it, I wouldn't see it. Talking to Shamus, who will be on with me shortly, and he watched Season 3, said he didn't. I hated Season 2. Hated it. And there's so much good content out there right now, ladies and gents. There's so much good stuff. There's movies that are nominated for Oscars that I want to see. So if you haven't seen The Fabelmans, I watched that this weekend. My God, what a film. Steven Spielberg's great. There's also good news on the home front. I learned today that Tom Cruise was not nominated for Best Actor for Top Gun Stinkrick. Still haven't seen the movie, never will. But it would offend me as an avid movie watcher and somebody that really cares about great films being recognized if Top Gun Maverick won anything. They might still win Best Picture, which would be so appalling. But there's a side note for you. Don't watch Jack Ryan Season 2. Save yourself some time. When there's bad stuff that I watch, I like to let you guys know. Like I said back in the day, don't watch The Batman. It's horrible. You'll never get that 3 hours. It was 3 hours. You'll never give it back. And I like that part of it. I love Joker. Watch Joker. I've seen Joker about 8 times. Not 8. I probably have 8 times at this point. I love it. Batman, not worth your time. But there's a little side note for you to bring it all the way home. But if you're the Leafs, find the goalie that's playing the best. He gets the net. Not because of credentials, you get the net. People just get the raise because they sit in a desk that's closest to the guy giving the raise? Or do they get the raise because they have the nicest suit? No, normally it's because you put in the work. You're really good at the job. They want to keep you. Not based off stupid factors like what have you done before. Because you might have been great in your old job. You switched over. If you're at a new job and there's 2 people doing it, and the person next to you is doing as good or better than you at that job, just because you were great at the other one, does not mean you should get the raise. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee. You might still get it, but that doesn't mean it's a lock for you to get it. That's my point on the Matt Murray front. He can earn this. And if I had to gamble, I think he starts game 1 at the end of the season because that's just the way I see it going. But to me, that it's just a locked in, he's starting game 1 of the first round. Enough with that. Enough. Also for the Leafs. The debate about their defense core will continue to go on. And, they got a lot of guys. They got Timmins, and they got Riley, Giordano, Hall, Liljegren, Sandin, TJ Brody. They might add another one at the trade deadline. To me, it is no longer negotiable, and it's definitive for me. Timothy Liljegren cannot come out of the lineup. I think he's my favorite defenseman on this team. He's fundamentally really, really sound. He makes very few mistakes. He skates well. He's got a really good read on when to jump into the zone. And Rasmus Sandin gets the flair because Rasmus Sandin will try more stuff with the puck, but I find he bobbles it a lot, and he would scare me a lot if he was my defense partner. Because and he's not a bad defenseman, don't get me wrong. He'd be better on the power play than Morgan Riley, but who isn't? But to me, Timothy Liljegren is not an option to come out of that lineup. So Timmins is a clear out, but if you're going to add to your defense score come playoff time, Timothy Liljegren is not coming out. It's Hall or it's Sandin in all likelihood. And it'll likely be Justin Hall, because I think they'll try to get a replacement for Justin Hall looking at that lineup. But I look at Liljegren. He might not bring the offensive upside that Rasmus Sandin does, but his hockey IQ and his sense for the moment in the game is superb. Really superb. I love the way he plays. He gets better and better. You go through the weeks, you go through the months. I just see a player that's really, really improving. So kudos to him for making that jump and making that increase in play. Now, through all that last night, I'm watching the New York Islanders. And you look at this team, and the first thing that jumps off the page is they're slow. They're slow. They're old and they're slow. You got Kyle Palmieri, Zach Parise, Adam Pelech, Matt Martin, Cal Clutterbuck, Casey Zizekas. Even, Brock Nelson and Anders Lee aren't exactly burners. You have an old New Jersey Devils team from the early 2010s. And you got Lou up there looking down on this team. They have a solid netminder in Ilya Sorokin. to me, he's a number one in this league, but you have a flawed team in front of him. A team that used to be about their defense, and now I can't look at this team and say they're a great defensive team anymore because they can't keep up with their competition. The Islanders would be a threat if they got into the playoffs. I still believe that. But unfortunately for them, their roster is so unorganized and so not prepared for a regular season, the 82-game grind, and the way the game is played on a given night, that they won't be able to get there. So, couple things. Scott Mayfield is a defenseman for the New York Islanders. He's number 24 if you didn't get to watch him last night. He is one of the most underrated, under-talked about defensemen in the NHL. He's got a big shot, he moves pretty well, and he makes $1.5 million a season. His deal is done at the end of this season, and to me, he's got one of the best contracts in hockey, period. He would be a great fit for any team, and to me, the Islanders are a seller. You look at that Metro, they're not catching Pittsburgh, they're not going to catch Washington, they're not going to catch the New York Rangers, so they need to understand where they are. And Lou Lamoriello is not exactly, okay, we're going to tank, I'm going to be around for a while. The dude's 80 years old. But if Scott Mayfield's going to walk out the door, you need to look at what you can get for him. And I think that could be quite a bit. Scott Mayfield will get $4 to $4.5 million on the open market. I believe that. He's a superb player. I don't see a world where he doesn't get that kind of money, where he doesn't get that sort of fame. But do they trade him? That's the question here. If they have the opportunity, do they make that move and ship him out of town? Many teams would love this player. That's where you look at him. You look at Vladislav Gavrikov in Columbus. Two defensemen that could serve a certain role and bring something to your team that's a little bit different. For teams, acquiring a Scott Mayfield would be like getting a David Savard for Tampa back in the day when they won a cup. It would be like getting Josh Manson on the Colorado Avalanche last year to really fortify that defense core and ultimately help you win a Stanley Cup. That could be Scott Mayfield this season. I could look around. I think the New Jersey Devils would love to have Scott Mayfield. He adds more girth to that back end. He adds a physical presence, and New Jersey's one of the smallest teams in the NHL. This team won't be able to afford him, but the Vegas Golden Knights could really use him on the back end. They're always banged up. They could use some veteran experience on that back end. Obviously, the Edmonton Oilers can always use defense help. There's always the possibility, and this seems far-fetched, but I'm not even kidding, the Ottawa Senators could trade for Scott Mayfield and do a sign-and-trade with the New York Islanders. Give up more pieces, but you can add a defenseman to your roster and have him for 4 to 5 years, maybe longer. That's the only way I see these big-name defensemen going to Ottawa. You need to do that. You need to be aggressive. Whether they do that with a Matt Dumba, they do that with a Scott Mayfield, something to think about. I just look at him. I'm watching the Islanders. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not in the mix. So if you're not in the mix and you could lose a player for nothing, I don't believe in losing a player for nothing. Unless you're going to re-sign him, then move him and get the best deal that you can for him because he's worth a hell of a lot. Because as I just mentioned, a lot of teams around the league that look like they're close to winning a Stanley Cup would love to get their hands on a Scott Mayfield or, for that matter, a Vladislav Gavrikov. Nobody watches the Islanders. I get it. Nobody cares about the New York Islanders. They haven't been relevant. They're boring to watch, yada, yada, yada. But all these teams have gems, have players that would be really nice to add to your roster. Scott Mayfield's one of them. And here's my other big thought. And I want to talk about, just thinking, pondering different things today. So as I'm watching the game last night as it unfolds, what comes to mind for me is just, what if Matt Barzal wasn't on this team? Matt Barzal is a very talented hockey player. He's Marner-esque in his abilities with the puck. Mitch Marner's a much better player defensively. Matt Barzal doesn't play penalty kill. But we've heard forever that Matt Barzal hasn't exactly always been thrilled about his role in Long Island. He wants to be the guy that drives the offense. He wants to have more of an impact. He wants to be able to run and gun and not play the Barry Trotz, Wayne Lambert system that severely restricts his options. So my thought is, well, what if he wasn't here? What if Matt Barzal was not on this roster? What if Lou Lamoriello, who looks at him and says, he's too much about himself. He doesn't fit into my culture as he's 80 years old, not understanding what the young people want these days. Where would be the best spot for Barzal? Well, I don't think they'd want to trade him inside the Eastern Conference because you don't want to play against that player all season long. Look at the Tkachuk trade. He goes to Florida. They go to Calgary. Gaudreau Toffoli was traded, oddly enough. He was traded originally to Montreal. He comes back out west. But again, you trade a player to the Eastern Conference, you don't see him all that much. So I would rule out the Eastern Conference unless there's a deal that just makes total sense for the New York Islanders. There's teams in their own division that would love him, but he's got a big ticket. You need to be able to fit that in. So is there a swap that makes sense? Well, looking out west, there are the teams that are trying to find themselves. Anaheim is not going to do it. They're tanking. San Jose doesn't have the money to do it. Vegas is not going to be able to make that move work. So you're shrinking teams. Calgary, does Matt Barzal going from Wayne Lambert to Daryl Sutter would be just cruel. It wouldn't be fair. There's no point in making that deal happen. Edmonton can't afford him. Vancouver's going through a rebuild. So I'm going through the Pacific. You get to the Metropolitan. Well, Minnesota, that's going to be tough to afford him. Colorado, that's tough to afford him. St. Louis is in a transitional state, but they have a lot of money coming off the books. They could potentially have a new head coach. They want to start in a new direction. A team with new possibilities. Tarasenko's out. Ryan O'Reilly's out. Where does the team go from here? You got Robert Thomas. You have Jordan Kyrou. You have Ivan Barbashev. Colton Parayko, Nicoletti signed up long-term. That could be a fit. Could be a fit in St. Louis. Where else could he go? The Los Angeles Kings would love to add another forward, but I don't see that happening. I don't think they want to spend big money on another forward. They traded for Kevin Fiala. They feel like they have enough. I think, if anything, they'd want to improve their back end. But as I look through this, St. Louis makes sense. St. Louis makes a lot of sense to me. Because Robert Thomas is a really good player. Jordan Kyrou is a really good player. But you could use another element that Matt Barzal has, is just elite skill, really great speed, and an offensive ability that at times will make you shake your head, but at the same time you appreciate because he brings so much to the table. What about the Winnipeg Jets? The Winnipeg Jets, it would be a splash trade. It might be in the offseason. But in the offseason, Mark Scheifele's an unrestricted free agent. Pierre-Luc Dubois is a restricted free agent. Both guys could be gone. Could have a state of transition in Winnipeg where Matt Barzal could come in and do his own thing with a coach that likes him. You wouldn't necessarily tank right away. You add Barzal, you still have Kyle Connor, you have Nick Ehlers, you have Cole Perfetti, who's very good at a young age. You have a Josh Morrissey, who's a Norris caliber defenseman. Doesn't sound all that bad. I just think for the Islanders and for Matt Barzal, they need a separation. They need something to change because he is not even going to the All-Star game this year, and he's on a bad team. Brock Nelson's going. I like Brock Nelson a lot, but Brock Nelson should not be going to the All-Star game over Matt Barzal. Based off play, I understand it. I do. But at the same time, it shouldn't be happening. This is Matt Barzal's time. He's in the prime of his career. Why is he not getting the opportunity? Why is he sitting on the side? Why is he getting so few points? Hasn't got a point in 8 straight games. It's this system, it's the players, and for Matt Barzal, I think he's a guy that has been in this system a long time. He knows what to expect, and he started to be a little bit careless. You see where they are in the standings. I don't think he's ever been happy. He took the extension in New York because it was a lot of money. And when you're a skilled player, you take the money and you stay. Because it's life-changing. It's what you play for. But to me, Matt Barzal needs a new place to play. Needs somewhere different. And I think it needs to be thought of, or it's just changing in management and coaching. Lou Lamoriello is 80 years old. But if they missed the playoffs this year, it'd be the second year in a row. And I thought when he fired Barry Trotz in the offseason, it didn't make any sense. They made it to back-to-back conference finals, including a Game 7 against the Tampa Bay Lightning with the roster that they have now. They don't make any changes to it to get better. Kyle Palmieri was their big addition. Kyle Palmieri would have been a big addition a decade ago when Lou was in New Jersey. But you look at the team through the years, it's the same guys. They just keep the same guys. They don't add anybody in free agency. They traded for Romanoff, which is fine. But there's nothing about this team that's new. You're not trying anything different. You're just running it back, and I don't see it working. This style of team, you need to get everything right and sneak your way into the playoff to make it. Because you don't have the elite skill of other teams. Your speed is below average. And your structure isn't great. Your structure needs to be superb when you're a team that lacks talent and lacks just basic quickness, and you don't have it. You don't have it. But to me, it would be better for Barzal, and it would be better for the Islanders if they moved on. It's not going to happen at the trade deadline. It's too difficult to trade. It's too much money. It's years left, all of that. But I believe teams would want him. But his value is decreasing by the year. Looking what he's done in New York, again, his numbers go down every year. His productivity goes down every year. So they need to think long and hard about what they could get for him too. Because if his numbers continue to dip, this team continues to make the playoffs, and he looks like a William Nylander of a couple years ago, what are you going to get for the guy? He makes way more money than William Nylander. And Matt Barzal is not a franchise player. He's not a guy that could be the best player on your team and you go win a Stanley Cup. It's just not going to happen. If he made less money, I think he'd be a good fit on the Boston Bruins. Pardon me. I think he'd work on Boston because you could fit him in with a number of guys and you have people that can fill roles alongside him. But where he currently is, he needs to be the man, and he just isn't. He's too careless with the puck. He doesn't look. He's not aware. And I just looked at his game last night. I thought he played horrible last night. Even in the first period where the Toronto Maple Leafs were dominated by the Islanders, he had really little to no effect on that. He wasn't the straw stirring the drink. He wasn't creating offensive opportunities. The play I remember most from him in the first period last night is he threw a pass cross ice, turnover in his own zone. The Leafs went down the other way and got a scoring opportunity. seemed to be trying a little too hard last night. I mentioned he hasn't got a point in 8 straight games. He's pressing. He's trying a little bit too much. He's from Ontario, so I'm sure he had family and friends in attendance last night. But I just thought during the game, what if Matt Barzal isn't a New York Islander? You were drafted here. You've done well. You got to 2 conference finals. But maybe this is just it for both sides. You need to change the scenery. You need to get that money off the books if you're the Islanders, and you want to start anew. I think it'd be good for this team. Because if you're in the middle, you're not going anywhere. You're average, you're right there, and you're stuck. You're in that quicksand forever. Kudos to the Washington and the Pittsburghs of the world who have stayed competitive throughout nearly 2 decades with Ovechkin and with Crosby. They constantly make the playoffs. They are constantly a threat if they get in. Pittsburgh went 7 games with the Rangers last year in the first round, went nip and tuck if they have a starting goaltender. They probably win that series to their credit. They had who did they have? No, it was Louis Domingue in that first round series. If they don't have Louis Domingue, they might win it. Washington pushed Florida to 6 games. So, those 2 franchises are the different where they still have their veterans. They tweak their roster to get a little bit better, and they still stay in the mix. But it's night and day, the 2 teams that played last night, who the Maple Leafs understand what this new generation and what the new regular season represents, what you need to be successful, what is necessary, how you have to play the game, this, that, and the other. And to this point, the Toronto Maple Leafs have built a roster that hasn't been able to be successful in the postseason. That we know. They haven't won a series. The Islanders had gotten to 2 straight conference finals. But the thing that you can say about Toronto, what they are consistent at, is put yourself in the tournament. Get to the tournament. Have the possibility to win the Stanley Cup. And that's something the New York Islanders won't be able to do this year. Because they won't be in the playoffs because they're not good enough. They don't have enough firepower. They don't play enough. They don't play well enough to be in that situation. We got news yesterday out of the nation's capital that Josh Norris, the promising young center for the Ottawa Senators, is out for the season with a shoulder injury. He'll require surgery. This is after he missed 38 games. He returned, play a couple of games, but he's going to sit out the rest of the year. And I had a couple thoughts on this. My first thought is, why did he play? Why did he play? You know he's hurt. You know he's got a shoulder injury. That's been reported forever. Why is he in the lineup? I don't understand it. Why did you bring him back? Why didn't you have surgery 2 months ago? It makes too much sense to have this surgery so he's back earlier. Ottawa's trying to rush him back because they're desperate to make the playoffs. Okay. But now they're in the same position where Josh Norris, one of their best players, done for the year. This team's likely done at making the playoffs, and you're stuck in quicksand. So with all that being said, I think the Senators need to really think about the future here. And they're an interesting team because I just mentioned them with Scott Mayfield, with Matt Dumba. They want to add a defenseman. And I'm curious to see how aggressive Pierre Dorion is. Because the timeline that interests me on the Ottawa Senators is when the sale of the team happens. Because if the sale of the team happens before mid-June, I think Pierre Dorion and DJ Smith are both going to be fired from their jobs at the Ottawa Senators. DJ Smith, obviously the head coach. Pierre Dorion is the general manager. Why? Because this new ownership group's going to come, and I think they're going to want to hire their own people. They're going to start fresh. They know what their team. They have some talent already, but I think they'll look at it and say, you both have been here a while. You haven't gotten us even to the playoffs. Let me hire somebody else that knows how to get the job done. Who that general manager is, I don't know. But that's something that I believe they'll look into. that they'll want to do. Because, again, Pierre Dorian's been around a long time. He's made some good trades, but he still hasn't been able to land a defenseman. If that sale of the team happens and it's July, August, DJ Smith and Pierre Dorian might be able to survive another season together. And Pierre Dorian might be able to run through free agency, might be able to make these moves. And if I'm Pierre Dorian, this trade deadline's a little different for me. Yes, you're not going to make the playoffs. You're tied with Ottawa. You're in the bottom of the Atlantic Division. And it's another really disappointing season. It is. But if you're at this trade deadline and there's a defenseman available, as I mentioned, you can sign and trade, you should do it. Whether it is Scott Mayfield, whether it is Matt Dumba, if it's Cam Fowler, the Anaheim Ducks, there will be players available. And just because there are teams looking to add to their teams to win doesn't mean that you can't outbid them. Doesn't mean that you can't improve your roster. It might not matter for this season, but it could mean more going into the next season. When Josh Norris is presumably healthy, when you'll have Timmy Stützle another year, he's having a great sophomore season, junior season. You'll have Shane Pinto, Claude Giroux, Drake Batherson. All your weapons up front. Hopefully you add a defenseman. You like to add 2 defensemen to that defense core going into next season. And if you can add another couple good moves, then if the ownership comes in, they might look at the team and say, this isn't that bad, and you let Pierre Dorian play out the year. He tries to get this team into the playoffs so that he can salvage the next contract. But that's the only way I see it happen. They're selling the team. I don't know when that will be finalized. But I believe the league will want to get this done before the start of free agency for sure, and I think that spells trouble for the Ottawa Senators. To me, if it gets done before, I think DJ Smith is 100% going to be fired as head coach. He's been there a long time. I think DJ Smith's a good coach, but I don't think he'll get the job. And with Pierre Dorian, it's the red flag, but he's been there a long time and he's had very little success. I think the people in Ottawa that truly love the team are growing frustrated. They look at their skill position players and say, yeah, we drafted Timmy Stützle, he's a really good player. We got Batherson, good player. Josh Norris, good player. Thomas Chabot was a good draft pick. He's a good player. But why in the last 2 years has Thomas Chabot played 27 minutes a game? Why the last 2 years has Thomas Chabot play increasingly gotten worse? Oh, yeah, maybe because he's playing so many damn minutes. But if you're a team that thinks you're on the cusp and you know you're not in the Bedard sweepstakes, why not try to get better? You'll still miss the playoffs this year, but you can add a piece going into the next season. And you might say, well, we don't want to do a sign and trade at the deadline because we don't want to give up assets to get this player. I get that, but my thought process now is that if you're a Canadian NHL team, you don't have the right, you just don't have the ability to do that anymore because players don't want to come play in Canada. Sorry, Canadians, but that's just the fact of life. It's so rare to see an Evander Kane stay. Why'd he stay? Because he got a bucket load of money, and not many other teams would pay him what he got. Look, what are the Toronto Maple Leafs' big free agent additions the last couple of years? Samsonov, $1 million because a team would give him a flyer. It's all flyers. There's no Claude Giroux. It's from Ottawa. Okay, he goes home. That doesn't count. Montreal, who have they got for agent market? Big name. Nobody. Edmonton, who have they gotten? Brett Kulak? I'd rather have a spoiled bag of milk than Brett Kulak. Way to go, Jack Campbell, Mr. Canada, went to another Canadian team. How predictable is that? Zach Hyman. If you're a Canadian, you might stay. You might stay. But you look at it. Look at Matthew Tkachuk. Look at Johnny Gaudreau. Look at these players that come up. They're leaving Canadian teams. You trade for a guy and you say, we'll give you all this money, please stay. You convince them to park it. Why is Johnny Huberdeau in Calgary? Because he's forced to, because he's under contract. He's freezing his ass off out there, still playing like crap. Still playing like crap for the Calgary Flames. In just pure misery. But he's there. Why did Mackenzie Weegar stay in Calgary? Oh, yeah. They traded for him where he had 1 year left on his deal, And they did a sign-and trade, you could say. Basically the same thing. Let's sign him for 8 years at more money than he would have gotten in the open market. Funny how that would work. That's how business is done in these Canadian markets. It's not, let's hope we can go talk to him when the talking period starts and we can convince him to come and join our program. La-di-da. No, he's not coming. He's not coming to your team. He'll go anywhere. He'll go to St. Louis. He'll go to Anaheim. Ottawa will never be the number one target. These Canadian markets won't. Edmonton won't be the choice. It'll be the choice of Brett Kulak. He's like, holy shit, a sucker. They took me. They'll go to Seattle. They'll go to Vegas. They'll continue to go to these markets that can help them make more money. That's just how I look at this. Ottawa has never been able to get a defenseman. Trade for one and hope. Trade for one and open negotiations. Talk to Lou Lamoriello and say, you know what, can we talk? Can we have a talking period with Scott Mayfield? Call up Columbus. Have a talking period with them. Call Minnesota. Minnesota, I think, would love to trade Matt Dumba to Ottawa. Why? He's out of the conference. As I just mentioned, you play him twice a season. Perfect. You were great for us while you're here. You're gone. I still don't think they should trade him, but I think if it's Ottawa and you want to try to get a defenseman, ask him up, call him up. Matt Dumba's played in the United States his entire career. Is he just going to want to go play in Edmonton or play in Ottawa just because they're rumored and in the rumor mill that they want to try to acquire him? No, doesn't mean anything. The media say they want the player. Doesn't mean the player wants them. The player wants, number one on the list, the most money. Number two, the best fit, whatever that means. And three, can I win a cup? Can you win a cup in Ottawa? Well, that's, again, a tough sell. You know what sells a team that doesn't win and is a shit market and is going to have to wait on a new rink and doesn't have ownership yet? You know what happens there? You know what sells that? Cash. Cash, not fit, not cups, not your teammates being nice guys. Money. Pay up, sucker. If I'm Ottawa, that's what I'm doing. Be aggressive at the deadline. Don't just trade off assets. That's the easy thing to do if you're the general manager. Well, let's trade away this player. And Ottawa doesn't have that much to trade, quite frankly. Because everybody they have is under contract. Unless they make a deal for a bigger name. You have to trade away one of your top prospects for a really good defenseman to add to your team. Shane Pinto's a good player. But if I could get Scott Mayfield, I would trade Shane Pinto in a second. I'm not trading Timmy Stutes. I'm not trading Batherson. If I had to trade Shane Pinto, and I think the Islanders would be happy to take Shane Pinto. I think Minnesota would be really happy about getting Shane Pinto, another player to add to their forward group who's young. Maybe Marco Rossi hits, you get Shane Pinto, you get some young, stable players that you can look into. And why can Ottawa afford to get rid of Shane Pinto? Because you have this kid named Ridley Gregg, who you drafted first overall, who just got called up. He can take his spot in the lineup. He plays center. I mean, Pierre Dory in Ottawa, you can hire me as a consultant if you want. Just saying. And Ottawa can afford the money. They don't like to spend it. That doesn't mean they can't afford the deal. Look into it. Seriously, look into it. You know, it's something to behold what we've seen this season with the Boston Bruins. It's so rare just to watch a hockey team and just expect to win. It's almost a lock every night they play. It's January 24th, and it's just been pure dominance for the entire 4 months of the NHL season. Boston hasn't had a hiccup. They haven't had a 3-game losing streak. They've lost 1 game on home ice in regulation. It's January. Linus Ullmark is the fastest goaltender to 25 wins in league history. David Krejci's been a perfect fit. David Pasternak's emerging as a true Hart Trophy candidate. Patrice Bergeron's still playing great. Brad Marchand's came back from injury. Charlie McAvoy is one of the best defensemen in hockey, period. Hampus Lindholm is fit like a glove. Jake DeBrusk has new life. Taylor Hall is playing well. Nothing has gone wrong in Boston to date. They are cruising, and they look poised to win the Atlantic Division and potentially the President's Trophy. But I just wanted to touch on this because they got 5 losses in regulation this year. 5. That's unseen. That is unheard of to see a team be that dominant. Truly remarkable what this team does. And when they play a bad team, they don't just let them hang. They kick their ass. They whooped up on the Sharks on Sunday. Martin Luther King was last week, and they trounced the Philadelphia Flyers 6-0. They just kill teams that they should kill. And then they get tough opponents, like they played the New York Rangers in a back-to-back last week. They go into MSG, win the game 3-1. They play the Toronto Maple Leafs. They beat them a couple Saturdays ago. They're just a juggernaut of epic proportions. A physical team that moves the puck extremely well, and their hockey IQ is off the charts. And they plug in guys like a Nick Foligno, who's finally healthy and he plays phenomenal hockey. Thomas Nosek works in Boston for whatever reason. Matt Grzelcyk fits like a glove in Boston, replacing Torrey Krug in a lot of areas. Hampus Lindholm is one of the best signings in recent memory. And I have this debate with my mother all the time. She says she's not really afraid of Boston. She doesn't see why her team, the Leafs, lose to Boston. I mean, if you're making the argument that the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Toronto Maple Leafs have a better bottom 6 than the Boston Bruins, I don't think you're watching the games. Charlie Coyle's in your bottom 6. Nick Foligno's in your bottom 6. It's 2 pretty damn good players that can drive lines. Nick Foligno's on your 4th line. And I look at this team that is really good, and I say they may add another big piece. They may add another centerman. Does Bo Horvat end up in Boston? I think it fits. Jonathan Toews, would he waive to go to Boston, the team he beat in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2013? Maybe. Maybe. Always a possibility. Could Boston land Timo Meier, who will be an RFA after the year with a qualifying offer? You don't got to keep the player, but it's certainly something to look into. To me, this team with Don Sweeney is going to do whatever they feel they have to do to win. They have a great team now, but you want to add depth, and you want to go for the kill shot. You know it's going to be a war to get out of your division, let alone the Eastern Conference. Because out west, it's a crapshoot. I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. I talked about it with Shamus last week on the pod. I still think the Colorado Avalanche are the best team in the Western Conference. And they're behind Minnesota right now. They're behind Winnipeg. They're behind Dallas. I just look at the way they played over the last 3 to 4 weeks. They are starting to get their mojo back. Their goaltending's been superb all year. That's never been a problem. Mikko Rantanen's been one of the best players in hockey, period, entire year. Makar's getting healthy. Sammy Girard's actually playing decent, which is a big surprise. The bottom of their lineup is gritty. Andrew Cogliano. This Colorado team, any given night, is the best team in the West. Because Vegas is too inconsistent. The Seattle Kraken are a great story and a good team, a playoff team. But they don't have the firepower of Colorado. But you look at the Kraken, they get a point against Colorado Saturday night. That's a win. You get a point against Colorado, take that game to the gimmick, you'll take that every day of the damn week. Dallas, I like a lot. Dallas is a very good team in their own right because you got guys like Radek Faksa and Gurionov that play in their bottom six. Kiviranta, who's a very good player that know their role and they play it really efficiently. And their defense core is superb. And Dallas is a team that just drafts really well too. They just find diamonds in the rough. You look at in one draft they drafted Ottinger, Heiskanen, and Jason Roberts, all in the first 40 picks of the draft. All three guys that are currently in the National Hockey League tearing it up. But to me, you look at it for Boston, your biggest competition is going to be escaping the East because you're going to have to beat a wild card team that will be easiest series. But let's just project, okay, it's Washington. That's a team that knows the playoffs, that will fight tooth and nail against you for everything. They won't give you an inch. They got a lot of veterans. So that's a tough series. Maybe it'll be Pittsburgh. Again, not an easy opponent. Then you get the winner of Tampa and Toronto. Not an easy series. That series likely going 6 or 7 games. Again, it's going to be a war if you get out of it. If you get out of that, you likely get the Carolina Hurricanes in the conference final. You lost to them last year. They play a frustrating style. They're great on home ice. They'll check you into oblivion. And I think the team's better this year more than anything. There's a lot to pontificate here. But if you can get through that East, then you got Colorado sitting there, and it's not an easy opponent. But for these East teams, they need to be more aggressive than the West because it's a tougher road to get there. You need to beat 3 worthy opponents. Carolina may win their division. They may not. New Jersey's still hanging around. New Jersey, I don't think will be a great playoff team, but they're going to make it. And they could finish first, and then who the hell knows? Let's say Carolina, again, you might get, I think New Jersey's going to make one of the top 3 spots in the Metropolitan. I might be wrong about that, but I think I'm going to be right. So let's say New Jersey gets one of the top 3. So Carolina will get either the Rangers, likely Rangers, Capitals, or Penguins in the postseason, unless my Sabres can squeak in, who've been playing really well as of late. The Ice Cats are starting to push. We might actually get a race for a wild card spot down the stretch, which would be nice because we never get one. But that's where I'm looking at stuff here. Is these teams in the East need to be more aggressive. They need to look at a big picture and make decisions. Make big decisions, tough decisions. Like Carolina, they lost Max Pacioretty. That's a huge loss because he's a good, proven playoff player, and he had 3 goals in 4 games before he tore his Achilles for the second time in 6 months, which is just crippling for that team. But if Carolina looks at it and says, you know what? We think we can win a cup this year, which is the way they should look at this. Let's go get Timo Meier. Do it. Do it. Don't hesitate. Don't think, well, we got to pay him too much. Don't worry. Trade him. If you don't want to pay him all that money, trade him. Win a cup. There's own rentals. I get it. It didn't work out for the Florida Panthers because they have their first-round pick. That's going to go to Montreal this year. It's unprotected. It could potentially be a Bedard pick. They're starting to win more games now. But it didn't work out for them. But you're in a better position. You feel better about yourself, and your path is a hell of a lot easier than it was for Florida last year. Because guess what? You don't got Tampa till the conference final. Or Toronto or Boston, for that matter. Till the conference final. Meaning you just got to take care of business in the Metro. It's not that tough. There's not that many great teams in the Metro. There's a bunch of average teams. They're all the same. Pittsburgh and Washington have been the same team for a decade. You know what they're going to get from them? They'll always be competitive. But as I see Shamus jump on, I'll ask him this question to jump to start our conversation. Jay, this year, the trade deadline, I was just saying, I think that the teams in the Eastern Conference need to be more aggressive than the teams in the West because it's tougher to get to the Stanley Cup final. You have to beat a Boston, you have to beat Tampa, your Leafs, Carolina to get there. Where in the West, I think it's a much easier path. How do you see that? What do you think of my theory there?
I think so. I mean, you could almost compare it if you were looking. I mean, I still have NFL in the mind from a great weekend of that. But if you want to compare the AFC to the NFC, it's kind of similar. Where the AFC's more stacked, and so is the Eastern Conference and the NHL. So yeah, that totally adds up for me. I mean, you think about how good the series were last year and how 8 teams were locked in basically before this date. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So
Yep.
it's more competitive because there's more teams. You got the Islanders more in the mix. The Devils are more in the mix now. So yeah, it's a little tougher to get into the playoffs, but there's also better competition. So I can see that there's definitely needs on every team,
Right.
and they're gonna obviously pay a higher price than say a Western Conference team who will say, yeah, we might need this, but we're going to be able to sneak by some of these teams in the first round. The Kraken, who no disrespect to them, but they don't have the playoff experience as a
Mhm.
unit, say that as a Colorado, a St. Louis, one of those teams, Minnesota.
Who's the best team out west?
Um, I'd say when healthy, it's got to be Colorado, but
Mhm.
they have. I need to see them healthy for a stretch of games. For 15 games, I need to see Colorado dominate, and when they do, I mean, it's easy to just kind of crown them the team of the West. But I don't know who's your team. If you take Colorado out of it,
If I take
say who's
Colorado out of it, yeah,
who's
it's
who's your
Colorado.
team?
It's Colorado for me. If I take Colorado out of it, oh, jeez.
You say you could say Vegas, but they just lost to Arizona. So like, how do you
And
crown a team?
I know, and they're really inconsistent. And Butch Cassidy's ready to choke out Jack Eichel. Oddly enough, Shay, and I don't think that I hate this roster, but I'm saying this because they they have the best player in the world. It might be Edmonton.
That's a scary thought.
It is, but they made the conference final last year.
Yeah, yeah, they did.
Otherwise, I would say Dallas because I like that roster a lot.
Okay, I watched a little bit of the Dallas game last night actually with Buffalo, and
Yeah, good
they're
game.
intriguing. They're intriguing. You can't give it to Edmonton because I just don't. I don't know. I just don't see enough out of the bottom of their lineup slash their D men.
Yeah, I know.
But
I hate it.
if they could figure it out, I mean, God, like they would be the best team in the West, no, like no problem. But they just, I don't know, something about the way they structured their team and maybe the signings they had last year with Kulak and bringing back Barry. I don't know if they were the smartest decisions, but who knows? They'll be in the market for some players come the trade deadline, and yeah,
Right.
hopefully they buff up some of those positions.
I'm watching your Leafs game last night against the Islanders, and Scott Mayfield jumps off the page for me. I love him as a player. He brings a lot of things. I equate him to a David Savard when obviously Tampa won. You think of Josh Manson when Colorado won last year. I think he could be that defenseman for a team that wins this year. He fills a similar role. He's on the last year of his deal, so he's a UFA. I don't think the Islanders are just not built for the regular season. They're not going to be able to make the playoffs. It became even more clear to me last night because I don't think your Leafs team played all that great, and they
Hmm.
dominated them in the back half of the game. Mayfield, do you see any teams that would be a great fit for him?
Well, I mean, one right off the top of my head. I mean, obviously Edmonton could use a guy like that. Low pay salary, actually defends better, and more importantly, plays with a lot of toughness. Like, let's be
Yep.
honest, he's a gritty player. He is a Islander type player where he's not afraid to get physical. He loves the corners and he'll block shots. So Edmonton's in a need for a guy that fits that exact description, right? If I
Yeah.
were to think of another team, maybe if I go to the Eastern Conference, trying to think of what philosophy. I mean, obviously, I'd love to have him as a
Yeah.
Leaf. I think I said last year. I think in when we were talking about guys the Leafs need, his name might have came out of my mouth a couple times just because
Yeah.
he does fit that role. Like not going to flash you with offense, but at least he's going to play consistent minutes and he's going to be a menace to the other team's, you know, top forward. So I
Would you
think he'd be great there
would
too.
you trade Sandin for him?
No, just because I think Sandin's he's shown too much this season. Sandin's got to be. He's not the guy, but he certainly could be a guy. If you said Liljegren, I think that's a different story. But I also think that they probably value Mayfield more than we value Liljegren, right? So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I could also see him just staying and resigning. I mean, that's it sounds
Mm,
stupid, but Lou probably has a way of talking this guy, saying, "Yeah, you could stay here for whatever 4 years and make 2 million," which yeah, it's I mean 2 million per. No, it's obviously 2 million over the course of
yeah,
4 years, but
yeah.
yeah, you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Does Lou come back next year?
I
I don't
guess,
know. I
yeah,
don't know if he comes back. I don't.
yeah. I don't not signing Trotz has looked really, really
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
Like that's kind of I don't know if what the thought process was behind that, but it's only hurt them, I think, in the long run of things.
right. If I would have told you on January 24th that Bill Nye, the wrist shot guy, had as many points as Mitch Marner, you would have told me what?
You're fucking crazy. No, really, like seriously, 4 points last night. He's playing. It's like he flips the switch and he's the best player on the ice, and I think that's going to pay him very well in a couple years.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I also don't foreseeing him remaining a Toronto Maple Leaf, which
Right,
can definitely hurt. But we won't have to think about that right now. All we got to think about is if he can consistently play like this right until into April, May, June.
right. Yeah, I think he's been their most consistent player all year long. To me, he drove that line last night with Tavares, and they obviously Keith made that in-game transition,
Hmm.
which is good on his part. I think he makes really smart decisions. Keith as a coach in game, which I give him full marks for. And yeah, Nylander just looks more confident. He's having that Ehlers season a couple of years ago. I remember Ehlers had about 85 points that season. He looked really phenomenal. And I've always looked at the two similarly because I think they're pretty similar in skill set and just the way they play the game.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, if Nylander's playing at this level, he was great in the playoffs last year. So he wasn't the problem. He was one of the guys that actually put the puck in the back of the net.
Yeah.
But if you got him going, Matthews, Marner, and then a more confident John Tavares, which he seems to be, that's obviously what you want firing on all cylinders heading into the postseason and down the stretch here.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe the amount of texts I got after Saturday. Oh, Leafs, Leafs Nation. And even from, like, I mean, you must get the text from your parents too, but my old man, anytime it seems like a Leaf loss, he's like, I'm just so disappointed. I'm like, they're second in their division
Yeah,
and it's January. Like,
right.
what happened to meaningful games only start in, May, June? You know what I mean? And everyone loses their mind over a loss against
It must be the
Montreal.
Montreal thing. It's got to
I
be the
think so.
Montreal.
I
Yeah,
think so. And it's like this isn't new. Like Montreal, Buffalo, Boston, like they whenever they see Toronto on the schedule on the sheet,
yeah,
they up their game. Like there's no one telling me different. Like no one can tell me that Buffalo in the last couple of years has played better when they see the blue and white roll into town or they're going to visit and they get a chance to pump them. I think
right.
with the Winter Classic game that happened last year, Buffalo was terrible, but guess what? They played really well in that game. And maybe
Mhm.
Toronto I was opposite, but it just seems to be a common thing in our division that teams that are not great always just play up to a different level when they're playing Toronto. But maybe it's me being a hardo.
This Caulfield injury, is there a smell coming there? Is something up
PT.
here? Is something afoot here with a little tank action in La Belle Province?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Is the injury disclosed or is it still
It's
kind
a
of like he's
shoulder, but I mean, he was played the 2 nights before, and he was scoring goals just like crazy, and then all of a sudden, oh,
right?
he's done for the year.
Yeah,
I don't know. I watched their last game. I didn't see anything that was that crazy, but
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
get cleaned
Who
up. I know
knows?
you know.
Who knows? A little TT time, a little tank time for old
Yeah.
Morial. But you know what? We'll get to it later about guys who need to get shifted and guys who need to leave because they're helping their teams too much. When you get a generational player, right? And it is really a race for Bedard this season more than ever. I mean, it really feels like that year that McDavid was in the running and everyone knew he was going to be that guy. And here was Buffalo, Edmonton, a aurora of teams that were just kind of finding ways to lose and making it really evident, which Montreal is doing right now.
Which team in the East has the best chance of making the playoffs outside looking in right now? Isles, Ice Cats, Sabres.
God, I want to say the Sabres, but they just can't. They're one of the best offensive teams in the league, which is scary, but they just don't defend. / their goaltending is maybe just not where it's supposed to be. Who is
Sabres.
this? What's that?
Sabres pretty good. Pretty good. Sabres.
I know you love you love a little Sabres going into the playoffs.
No,
It would be huge for the team. I would say that. I gotta say, Ice Cats is who?
Panthers.
Okay, I thought that. I have no faith in the Panthers. I got no faith that I'd have to say the Islanders, honestly, and it sounds pathetic, but they've got the best goaltender out of those two teams, and their team is structured, but they just can't score, which is kind of strange. Where you got guys like Palmieri, Beauvillier, Honors Lee, like you're paying these guys good money, mainly to put the puck in the back of the net, and they just can't do it. Like even Barzal has not been scoring at a rate where he has in the past, so. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, but I think they've got the best chance because I have no faith in the Panthers right now. They're just not a great team.
Yeah, and plus they got both guys out. Alex Lyons starting games for them right now, so that's a tough stretch for them. And they got Pittsburgh in a back-to-back tonight, so good luck with the third-string goalie down there. Johnny Gaudreau returned to Calgary last night, and I got a few. I haven't talked about this game yet, but I wanted to get your thoughts to him coming out, to him being booed pretty loud at the Scotia at the Saddledome last night.
Man, Alberta's a tough place to play. Like, and as bad as Montreal, and Toronto have it to be, but I think Alberta can be just as bad, sometimes more harsh, because there's not a lot. Like we talked about it, there's not a lot to do in Alberta. So watching hockey, playing hockey, you were out there in the dead of winter. A couple years ago, that there's people are inside, and when you do inside, you mainly drink or watch hockey, and unfortunately, that's how it goes. So Johnny's target was bigger than ever last night, and I get a kick out of him not looking up for the. He didn't once look at the screen for his. I don't want to call it promo
his
video.
Just
his video. Tribute video. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. He didn't once look up, so I don't know if that was him kind of giving a shot back at Calgary for being like, this doesn't affect me in the good or the bad, but yeah, I mean, I'd like if I was a Calgary fan, I'd have no ill will with Johnny Gaudreau wanting to leave. Is it because maybe he didn't tell you midseason when he was dominating? Well, odds are we weren't to trade him anyways because you were in a playoff spot. So it's not like the Tavares effect, I think, of a couple of years ago where you were going to miss the playoffs, but you might have got something for him if you trade. No, like you were still going to keep him regardless. So there's no reason to be poopy pants about it.
Right. And I'd be happy you didn't pay him all that money. They offered him $11 million, and that would be such an anchor. I mean, you already got that anchor. His name's Jonathan Huberdeau. But, I mean, that'd be worse. I mean, he played some hard last night, though, Shay. I watched a period and a half of that game. Well, I watched a period and a half, then couldn't sleep, so woke up for the third. But I've never seen him play harder all year long. He wanted to score so damn bad. He got a penalty shot, missed the net by 10 feet. He's working hard to get to the front end. My God, is Columbus bad. They are like it. Honestly, I still have no faith in Calgary because they gave a point to that brutal Blue Jackets team last night. They truly have nothing going on for that team. Like it's a tough thing to look at, the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah. Good luck to Beamer. It's bad.
Yeah.
And the worst part,
Oregon, that's it.
Yeah, you thought they would. You thought they had a goaltender, and it's like someone pulled the rug right out from behind you because like Merzlikins is so, I don't know. I get it. He's on a bad team. He's got bad D men in front of him. He doesn't have Wawinski anymore, but he has not looked great either. Like,
No.
we're going to talk about another team later that I think has a good goaltender, but are just bad. This
Right.
team is bad, but just have a bad goaltender to go on top of it.
So yeah, let's go through this. I sent this to you last night and I pitched earlier. So we're going to talk about the sellers at the trade deadline, the tank for Bedard teams that just truly stink. There's a lot of them this year in the NHL. And we're going to talk about players on these rosters that we believe these teams need to trade these players in order for these teams to lose more games so that they can get one Connor Bedard. So I got a list of players. I know you got a list of players. We can just go back and forth. We might have some of the same guys. You can start it off.
Right. I'll start pretty close to home, I guess. Montreal. Obviously, Caulfield done for the end of the season, whatever that means. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. It's kind of a mystery nowadays. They say that, and then 90% of time doesn't end up being true. Joel Edmondson, couple years left on his contract. Good, solid D man. I mean, he's got cup experience. Been to 2 Stanley Cup finals. I think he'd be great on an Edmonton, on a
Mhm.
trying to think of a team, really any team that could use like a fourth guy that just defends. Not going to give you a ton of offense, but
Washington.
Washington could love a
Yeah,
defenseman like Joel
yeah,
Edmondson. Like that, like
yeah.
if they could trade him for your boy Eric Gustafson straight
Oh
up,
my God.
would be a dream come true. But that's never
Montreal
going
would
to
love to
happen.
have him back too. He'd help them lose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they might do that deal. They just might. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's hurting the team because he's good defensively, and he had a pretty solid night against the Leafs. I will say that.
Yeah, yeah, he did play well. He's really consistent. I like him a lot, but I'm right with you there. They need to sell him. I'm gonna go to Anaheim and that team. Oh God! But this guy's having a good season. He's a veteran. He's played in a Stanley Cup final, like Joel Edmondson. Adam Henrique quietly has 16 goals on the season. He's a great. He works with the young players in Anaheim. He always gives a consistent effort, and he's played on good teams. He was on the New Jersey team in the 2012 Stanley Cup final. He's still got some juice left in that. He's got a no trade. Maybe he doesn't want to leave Anaheim. I wouldn't blame him. Great weather and all that. But if he does want to take a crack at winning another Stanley Cup, I think it would be smart for them to trade him before he becomes a UFA in June.
What about Carolina?
Yep.
This is on theory that they don't get Bo Horvat, which they might because of the
Right.
Pacioretty
Right.
debacle, and his career kind of derailing
Uh,
to injury. But
I felt so bad for him this weekend when I heard that.
that was an awful sight to see him go down like that. You could tell that he was in excruciating
Yeah.
pain. If anyone didn't see it, Pacioretty obviously has been off all season basically due to, I think it was was it a leg injury?
It was a torn Achilles, and he tore the Achilles again.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, no, if you're not a medical guy, I'm not certainly a medical guy, but it's probably one of the more painful injuries you could
Yep.
sustain, and you saw it. And Pacioretty's not a softie by any means; he's
No.
a pretty tough guy, and I think that, yeah. So anyone wants to go back and watch that, they can see that. But yeah, Adam Henrique to Carolina, feasible option from my mind. I mean, they're getting a depth guy, a good, solid, two-way guy that is going to be able to help them on both ends of the ice. So I like that.
Right. Yeah, I think he fits in well too. Like you mentioned, Jordan Stahl is similar to Adam Henrique. I think that would make a lot of sense. You can go.
Yeah, similar on that team. I also have Kulikov. We don't have to go much over
Yeah.
him. I don't think he's going to remain with the team after this year. So
Yeah.
he might give a little depth to a team that needs a bigger defender on the back. I think of Labushkin last year for
Right.
Toronto. It could be the same for another team. How about Max Domi from Chicago? If
He's
I
on
mean
my
Chicago,
list too. Yeah.
if they don't need a reason to get any worse, they're already really, really bad. But
Yeah.
Domi's actually had a half decent year for them, and I think if you want to sell a guy high at a very low cap rate, I think the Domi would be your guy, right?
He fit in well with Carolina last year when he was traded there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think yeah, to me he's on my list too. He leads Chicago in points, which is crazy because Patrick Kane and Jonathan Tays are on that team.
Right.
But he's had a good season. He's played in a lot of different situations. I think it takes the right spot because I think some people have this thought about Max Domi that he's like a cancer or something, which I don't think is true and I don't think it's fair, quite honestly. But or maybe that's just my dad. But I think he works hard, and if you get him in the right situation, I think you get him on a competitive team. We saw what he was when he first got to Montreal. He was so excited to be there after being in the desert for so long in obscurity. He'd be happy to be competing for a championship again.
Yeah. I think of a team like Winnipeg, Dallas, love to just enter a guy like that into their lineup just to give them that little extra boost. Not that they need it, but I think just in case something happened down the road, you always want that little bit of insurance going down just in case someone goes down. Absolutely love that. And this brings another question to Chicago. You can't see Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves moving it before the end of this year?
Yes.
You still can see them moving?
Yeah, I
Either
can.
one of them?
Yeah, I think they both will.
Prime spot for Kane or
I mean, I got to stick with what I said. I got to stick with the
the,
Rangers.
okay, sticking with the capital. I like it.
Yeah, and Taves, I think there's a couple. I think it would work in Boston. Obviously,
Wow.
he's got a no move, but
They both do, yeah.
I think that would work. Or your Leafs.
Wow. That'd be something. That'd be something because you can only take half his salary, right? Which is interesting.
Yeah,
But I think
yeah,
all things aside, I think you'd be a great fit. And obviously, leader wise, I mean, you're getting one of the best leaders in the last 2 decades on your
yeah,
team. No doubt about it. Um, let's move it to the desert. A guy that's been talked about being traded forever, Jacob Churchrin.
yeah.
I mean, does Arizona just have to stop being fussy and trade this guy already?
Pretty much. Yeah, because I don't think
Like,
they're not getting 3 first-round picks for him. Like, I
no,
just
and
give up.
this, yeah, like this is the most you're going to get for him now because I think like everyone's kind of seen it, right? He's got a little bit of injury problems and they know what he is.
Yep,
Just trade him already. I mean, he's not going to be part of your rebuild. He's not going to be part of the restructure, and
right.
he's only helping your team because he's a solid two-way defender most nights. Yeah, I think he needs to go somewhere. I don't know. Like we both have discussions both on and off the pod about where he should land.
Mhm.
But I think for Arizona, they just kind of had to bite the bullet because I think they've waited too long now, and I think that value is actually decreased instead of increasing, which is not what you usually see. That and their goaltender. Their goaltender is the guy I referenced earlier about being
Mm,
better. He's a
mhm.
good goaltender on a really bad team. I think at his cap rate, I think teams would love to have him, even as a backup if they
Right.
could afford him.
Yeah, I agree. Really good insurance policy. But for the Chikrin piece, I mentioned this earlier in the pod. This is just an idea I had that I think could happen. The Ottawa Senators are not going to make the playoffs. We both know this, but I think they look at it and they want to be competitive next year. They want to be in the mix.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to sell. Plus, I don't think they have that much to sell. We talk about bad teams, but they're not going to trade Josh Norris. They're not trading Drake Batherson. They're not trading my guy Timmy Stutes. They're not trading Claude Giroux. So, what if they added? But they could either do a sign and trade with a player like Matt Dumba, or a sign and trade with potentially a Cam Fowler or a Mayfield, as I referenced earlier, or they trade for Chikrin. They go at the trade deadline. They trade for Chikrin. They go into next season with another defenseman. They add another one for agency, and they have something to look at. That's one way I could look at Ottawa being a team that doesn't make the playoff, but that could still be aggressive at the trade deadline.
Would also show their fans they're starting to care. Where
Right.
the last number of years they've sold at this time instead of buying, which
Hmm.
I think
And the
would be
new
a good
owners.
sign. It'd be difficult, yeah, and and new owners. Hey, we have a better team than it looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
It'd be difficult to sell to some people because they're saying, well, if you're not going to make the playoffs, why try and do it? But I
Mhm.
understand your thinking where the team is locked in. They just need to finally get off the right foot and do something. I think a goaltender there too would be well. What if they got both the goaltender and Chicharrin? That'd be a
Yeah.
nice little combination for the future.
Plus, if you're Arizona, you know you're getting a first round pick that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, probably Lassie Thompson in there too. Maybe a
Right.
guy like
Yeah.
maybe Pinto moves in that deal as well. Who
I
knows?
think Pinto for sure. You put him in the deal, like you said. Lassie Thompson could be involved, who's a really good defenseman in the American League. I think they could make it work. you might have to give up a piece that you don't love giving away, like maybe Jacob Bernard Docker goes in the deal too, or but if you traded for Velmelka and Chikrin, if you traded Pinto, a 2023 first, which would likely be a top 10 pick in all likelihood, so that's a great pick, and Lassie Thompson, is that a fair deal for the two players?
I'd say so. Yeah, I think for sure. I mean,
First, first round pick being a top 10 is a game changer because I think Pinto's a good player.
no, you're missing a guy. You sent Hamnick along with that package,
Okay.
kind of as a
Great.
get rid of him.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Uh,
down. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, we're down with that. So we're gonna manifest that until the end of the year.
Yeah.
So
I
that
agree.
Ottawa does
Make it
some good
happen.
things.
Yeah.
Last team I have on my books, I have the team that we talked about earlier, Columbus.
Hmm.
Gavrikov, obviously, talked about this guy a lot. Love to see him in a Leafs uniform. I don't know if we'll see it because I think he's just more or less he's wanted by a lot of different teams now, right? Like I always hear and see tweets about different teams kind of in the mix / having conversations with Kekalainen about this guy. So I don't foreseeing him being a Leaf, but he'll definitely land somewhere.
Right. Yeah. I think it'd be tough for the Leafs to get him, but I think they could if if they really look at him and they want him, and that's who they kind of zero in on.
Yeah.
They could make it work.
Yeah.
Like I,
What if they ask for Nyes?
he's already on the bird.
Yeah, no, he's there. He's there. Yeah, yeah. We
I
actually
just
sent him before this
I don't buy
conversation.
in that he's going to come from college and be this great player. Like there's the Cale Makars who does that. No, nobody else. Like nobody. Jimmy VC didn't do it when he won the Hobie Baker,
Right.
and Gaudreau wasn't even that good when he came out of college right away. So it's tough to make that transition.
Hmm.
They're trying to win this year, So hopefully Rodion Amirov can recover from cancer and he can come back and be a good player. You still have that first round pick in the chamber. Nyes
Yeah,
is obviously a second round pick. And if you traded for Gavrikov and you got rid of Nyes, I don't think you'd have to trade your first round pick in 2023.
me neither. No, I think Kekalainen would
Maybe
gamble
maybe
on
you could
that.
put Nyes in there and you add another player, maybe, or maybe you put a third or something. I think you could make that deal work.
Yeah. Other two guys on my list for Columbus because I really think they should just stink it up this year. There's no point in trying to hide who you really are. Gus Nyquist, veteran guy,
Mhm.
having an okay season. Maybe you eat some salary, but you can get a first round pick for him, and he becomes kind of like a depth guy for a good team. And Sean Corelli, not a
Yep.
bad player, had as a
Yep.
fourth liner. We saw what he did with Boston a few years ago in their cup run. Really, really solid player. I think he'd be fit on a lot of good teams too.
Is Calgary going to be a team that adds at the trade deadline?
I don't know. Calgary's so interesting, right? Because like they're on the cuff, but then they're struggling to beat Columbus's, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think to save Tree Living's life, I think he's gotta maybe try and he has to do some maneuvering for sure. And I think he's got to try and get somebody there that's going to help this team.
Right.
And I don't know if it's a goaltender. I don't know. I don't know how much more you can add off your back end because your back end kind of stacked already.
Yeah.
Maybe you move somebody out to try something new. I have no idea.
Unsung hero that back end, Nikita Zadorov. He's playing phenomenal this
Yeah.
year. He played 27 minutes last night. Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah. Sneaky, maybe the best signing of
Yeah.
Calgary's offseason when you think about it.
And sneaky Tread Living's best move, allowing idiot Kekalainen to sign Eric Goodbranson for 4 years, 16.
Yes. Yes. Hated that deal.
Yeah.
Hated that deal. It brought no value, and you're
Yeah.
just overpaying a guy.
No.
Yeah, no, for no reason.
No.
It's keeping Zadorov was great. I think he's a great teammate too. I just think he's been looking for the right place to find a home, and I think he found it.
Right. No, agreed. No, that deal still.
What do you?
I saw him last night playing in Columbus, and I said, "Wow, they have him for 3 more years. They must be stoked."
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that's what Johnny Gaudreau saw too when he signed there. He was like, "Yeah, this is exactly the guy I want to be passing to
This
every
guy's
night."
here with me again. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was I? Is it going to mention? Oh, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Oh, no problem. Lakers made a move yesterday in the
Hmm.
NBA. They traded for Rui Hachimura from the Washington Wizards for 3 second-round picks and Kendrick Nunn. Second-round picks are all way down the line. So I viewed this as a good trade for the Lakers. They still think
Me
they can
too.
win. They need to continue to try because they have LeBron playing so great. Anthony Davis is supposedly going to be back this week, so he'll probably be injured next week. But nevertheless, I like that they're being aggressive, and they kind of have to do this when they have LeBron still in the payroll.
Yeah, they're so limited, and I think with the limited amount of assets they had, they actually made a really good move. I don't know a ton about this guy other than when I watched him play against the Seas, but I think he's a solid four. In this lineup, he could be a starter. And honestly, it's a team that needs a big man who's going to be in the lineup every night. Like Thomas Bryant had a great night. I think it was against maybe Sacramento, maybe the
Mhm.
team, and he had 30 and 15. But he's not going to play 30. He's not going to put up 30 and 15 every night. So
No.
I think this guy's pretty consistent. He's going to bring something different to the team, and I think his numbers will be great because I think LeBron is going to be passing to him quite a bit, especially if Anthony Davis, like you said, is out every other week.
Right. What did you make of Shannon Sharp almost getting in a fight Friday night at Staples?
I got mixed reviews about this. I talked about this in depth with a couple different people, but I don't know. I don't know. I used to like Shannon and not like Skip. Now I'm kind of more on not liking both of them, which is not something I wanted to do. But yeah, I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
At the same time, if you're a player, like I think about, I always refer this back to when I think of fans and fans sitting courtside getting into it with players. Reggie Miller didn't, get in Spike Lee's face when he was dropping shots and Spike Lee was giving it to him all night like long in the Madison Square Garden. Why is Dylan Brooks better or think he's more entitled than Reggie Miller? I do not know.
Right.
So I think it's a cool your head thing. What did Shannon Sharp say? I think he just said like you can't guard LeBron, right?
You said you're too small to guard LeBron or something like that,
Which
which
is
is true.
yeah, it's totally valid.
I'll say for Shannon Sharp, he was acting tough, but that pirate gets his hands on Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp's old ass is going to the ground. I'm talking about Steven Adams.
Oh, the pirate. I was gonna say I don't
Pirate.
know.
Yeah,
The
the
pirate.
pirate.
Yeah, he's a tough bastard, right? Like he's a
Yeah.
tough dude. I wouldn't want I in my worst nightmares if I had anyone chasing me, I would be like, yeah, there's like John Wick maybe, and then like the Navy SEALs, and then like Steven Adams would be right underneath those two. Like
Right.
tough, scary mother effer. And honestly, since that time, Memphis has not looked super great, which is
Yeah,
not.
Sacramento dropped a 30 piece on him last night. Mhm.
And they lost that game too. I mean, it's not been a super, I mean, good thing. You'd think it would kind of boost their confidence, but I think it's just kind of torn them down, unfortunately. And
Right.
for Shannon Sharp, I don't know why you're doing all this chirping on the sidelines, like,
Yeah.
and then come out with a big apology on your pod. Like, I don't know. It's very
Just stick
confusing.
to hating the Cowboys and yelling. Like, just don't go to the games,
Yeah.
clearly. And stop wearing your comforter to the game as well.
Yeah, real comfy guy. What were your thoughts about that and just Memphis as a whole in the game, I guess?
Memphis is yappy. They always got something to say, and all I gotta say for Memphis is they better win this year because they don't shut up. But they got to win something because they never be quiet. But Shannon, you're a paying customer. Sit down and enjoy the game. Like, come on. Okay, I mean, you might have been overserved. I don't know. Might have been drinking that Lapotier Cognac, whatever the hell he liquor, and he's wearing that stupid comforter sweater there that looks like he was supposed to bring it to
Yeah,
bed.
yeah.
But I didn't love it from either one. But I thought Shannon was he was trying to get in the middle of the floor, like he was out of line. If it was me or you, we would not have been allowed back for the second half. I'll add that.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think that's the major problem that a lot of people have. It's like this guy's in the Hall of Fame, so AKA he's entitled to, you know, get
Yeah.
into it with the players, and he runs a major podcast. Yeah. Anyways, it really does say like, okay, this guy's above everybody else when it comes to the
Yeah.
fans and paying fans.
How afraid are you of the Orlando Magic?
Petrified. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Thank God that's not a series.
Well, it could be. You never know. Like Orlando's sneaky team that just
Yeah.
they don't want to go away. They have a great up and coming star in Benchero. He's going to be
Yeah.
elite, I think, in my mind. I think about more and more last week when we talked about Freddie Van Fleet getting there. I think it would
Mhm.
be excellent trade for them. And yeah, I mean, they did it to us again. I don't know if we've beaten Orlando this year. I'm not
No,
joking.
I think you're 0-3. I think.
I think that's like our kryptonite is Orlando just putting work in on us every night. And I mean, yeah, you've got some guys out of the lineup. I don't think Borgon played, and maybe a couple other guys. I don't think Time Lord played, which
Mm.
seems to continually miss time, which is very frustrating for me. It's like when is he kind of be healthy for a consistent basis? But yeah, I don't know. It makes me more and more think that we need another guy playing center that's going to be because Blake. I don't like Blake Griffin. I don't like playing him every fifth game. I'm sorry, that's just not working for him
Yeah.
anymore. That was maybe cool, maybe a little. I would say
In
nostalgic.
October. Yeah.
Yeah, that was nostalgic back in October. Now it's just an annoyance to me every time I got
Right.
to see him waddle up and down the court. Um, yeah, go get a big man. There's plenty of them out there.
Yeah. OKC, can they make the playoffs?
Yeah, I thought about this when you texted me and I said, did they want to make the playoffs? But honestly,
Why not?
why not? Yeah, your team's good. You have all this. I mean, you have a bunch of first round picks
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
It's not like it's gonna hurt you. So yeah, might as well just like go for it. And like you said a few weeks ago, it's gonna intrigue Shea Gillis Alexander to stay there.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't realize this till today. We have the same first name
Yes.
when we cut it down. So
Yeah.
a lot of things in common. He's a great basketball player. I was really bad at basketball.
Still great at basketball yourself.
Yeah, when I play 2K online.
Still
No,
count.
yeah. So it's going to make him happy to be there, and it's going to say, okay, I can see a future with this team moving forward, getting that playoff experience. Hey, we get boost out of the first round, whatever. Next year will be better, and our team will be better for it.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. I hope they continue to because I like watching them play. They play a fun brand of basketball. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's, if they make the playoffs, he'll be in that MVP conversation because he's played unbelievable this year. What did you see any of the Oscar nominated movies or shows? Any big takes from you on Oscar Day?
I don't have too many takes. I haven't watched some of the movies, and I don't know. I think this movie it's on Amazon. I think it's called Everywhere Everything All at Once.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the one that like I think she'll win the best actress. I think there'll be a couple people in the mix. Like I'm not a betting guy on on movies and Oscars, but
Mm,
put your cash down on maybe a couple of those because I think that'll do really well. But I always love this time of the year because then I get to go see the movies that are doing really well. The one
right.
I want to see because I love Colin Farrell is the
Oh, the
Banshees of
Banshees of Inisherin.
yeah,
Yes,
Inisherin. I want to watch that, and it's on my list. So I think I'm going to watch
good,
that this week because,
really good.
yeah, I want to see it. Anything coming from you? Anyone you got think got jibbed?
I'm so happy that Tom Cruise did not get nominated for Best Actor. Top Gun
I
Maverick.
knew I had a feeling you were going to say something like that. The movie got nominated for Best Picture, though, right?
Yeah, they'll probably win. I'm
Who
not even
knows?
kidding. They'll probably win. Like that's my prediction. They'll win
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's
But
good.
I'm glad he didn't. He didn't deserve it. Colin Farrell, I think, is going to win that award.
I hope so. I hope so. He's one of a kind. He's
I
just
do
a
have
funny
a
bastard.
beef. I do have a beef with Colin Farrell.
What's that?
They're making a Penguin show
Oh,
based
like
that
off of the Batman movie?
and I didn't even know it was him the whole time he did it. So that's a number one. I hated the film, so that's number two.
Right.
And I don't know what they're going to do with it. I didn't see a whole lot of I didn't find his character all that compelling in the movie, so I don't see where that's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna go. I'm intrigued by this whole new Batman phase that we got going on. I
Oh
think
God.
it's not too shabby. I like my boy Paul Dano in that flick.
Oh yeah,
He's pretty
did you
good.
hear? Did you hear what he said, or could you not hear it the whole movie?
I heard exactly what he said. He's speaking in
Yeah.
riddles.
Okay. Had him
And
in
he's the Riddler.
the volume at 100, or
I was in theaters, baby. I was I was taking that
God,
all
you
in
sat
behind my
there for
popcorn.
3 hours in that theater. Jesus, Murphy, God help you.
I hope he's not in it, but I hope your movie, your flick, The Fablesman. I hope that wins. I would be surprised if Spielberg wins a movie
Yeah.
about himself for Best Actor. That would be not shocking in my opinion.
Wouldn't that be just a swag move from old Spielberg? Yeah,
Yeah,
and
make a
just
movie about
another
myself.
just another one that James Cameron didn't win, so it's a win all the way around for everybody. But any big plans rest of the week? Anything you got? Anything you're watching right now, series wise?
Watching Yellow Jackets, which has been interesting, was a Showtime special. Giving that a shot. It's been good so far. Kind of leaves a lot of intrigue, but the acting's been really good, and I'm going to kind of keep that up. Kind of goes back and forth from the 90s to 2021, present day, kind of. So that's been good. Other than that, I got to get a little fender bender in my car, so I'll be fixing that.
Ooh,
Yeah, that wasn't fun. I'll tell you about that maybe a little later. And oh, gonna make a little trip up to our favorite little Fred City. Some good
nice.
memories, man. Got to see some friends. Maybe have a couple pints, but we'll see. I'm also kind of getting a little sore throat, so I got to battle some sickness here coming in
All right,
soon.
get some fisherman's friends into you.
Yeah, what's your go-to for sickness when you start to get the cold? You've been sick a couple times this year.
Yeah. So you said you got a sore throat, kind of cough.
Starting to, yeah, no
Yeah.
cough yet, but starting to get a sore
I
throat.
like for me, I like to just have like something. So, like you either have like a peppermint or like a fisherman friend. So you just have something in your throat the whole time. So if you're kind of sucking on something, I find it doesn't. You don't cough as much, and it can
Okay.
kind of go away a little bit. So that's something I would say. Wear a jacket, which I did not do when I was sick. So that probably prolonged my sickness. But I know
Yeah.
you will do that. You're smarter than me on that one. But yeah, rest, fisherman friends, jackets, yellow jackets.
Gotcha. Yellow jacket. I like
Mhm.
it. I like
Yeah,
that mix. What about you? What's going on for the rest of the week? Any guests?
yeah.
Any going on this
Writers going to
weekend?
join me tomorrow. We're going to preview the football games this coming weekend.
Mm.
Talk about everything Patrick Mahomes there. The Rents are going to the Leaf game tomorrow night against the Rangers. So they will be
Ooh.
at the Scotia Bank tomorrow night. So they'll be watching that. Tomorrow, actually, the Farmers Insurance starts tomorrow on a Wednesday because they're finishing the tournament Saturday to avoid the conference championship games in the NFL. So you
Smart.
got at Torrey Pines, one of the nicest courses in the world. John Rahm, best player in the world, is carving up the PGA Tour right now. So we're watching the Farmers. No UFC this weekend, which is a bummer. But NFL, and I think my next show, because I'm not watching Jack Ryan season 3 yet anyway, because season 2, I still need to process what
How
that
bad it
was.
was.
Yeah, I think I'm going to watch Fleischman is in Trouble with Jesse Eisenberg. Uh, it's on HBO Max, and I've heard good things. It's about a couple that's going through a divorce, and you know me, I love myself some Jesse Eisenberg. Also, Lily Collins is in that show. So I think I've heard some good things, and I'm gonna watch that.
Well, keep us updated. And Jesse Eisenberg, guy that sneakily just kind of not fell off the face of the earth, but just decided he was done for a little bit because I haven't seen him
Yeah.
in anything since like well that shitty. Oh, I guess he was in that shitty Batman and Superman movie. That was the last thing he was in that I can remember.
Oh, yeah. And he's in that the Magic with your boy Baldy there, Woody
Magic.
Harrelson. Let me see you or let me see it.
Oh, now you see me. Yeah,
That's
those
it.
flicks.
Yeah.
I never watched those. I'll have to give that a try. He's in it. He's
I
a good
watched the.
actor.
I watched the. I like him. Yeah, I don't know why, but I like Jesse Eisenberg. But yeah, no, we'll have fun in Freddie. Get some fisherman's friends in you. Make sure Kennedy makes you some soup. Get you on the mend, and have a good weekend, my friend.
Thank you. You as well.
All right,
Take care.
talk to you next week. There's Shamus Fillmore, everybody. Hopefully his sore throat can get better quickly. Always great to chat to him. Tomorrow on the show, Matt Wright will be joining me. We'll talk all things NFL. We'll also preview the Leaf game. Going to talk Australian Open tomorrow. Last night we saw Alina Rybakina move on. She will play Victoria Azarenka, two-time winner at the Australian Open in the semifinal. Stefanos Tsitsipas will play Karen Khachanov of Russia in the men's semifinal. Tonight you have Rublev, Djokovic, semifinal, two unranked American men, Karolina Pliskova, two-time major finalist who has a great opportunity to get back to another major final, with a lot of big names out of the tournament. So Australian Open tonight, we got lots of NHL action that we'll break down tomorrow, and Matt Wright is always a fun guest. So until then, have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Just to the point.